our third week of the Fractured series. We're looking at different things that we do that can fracture our relationships. We talked about greed and pride in the other 2 weeks, and this week I wanted to talk about lust. Now, for the purposes of our conversation here, lust is whenever you draw sexual satisfaction from anyone other than your spouse, and in particular when that pursuit of that gets you in trouble. Relationally, when it starts to occupy way too much of your mind, when it starts taking you places that you really deep down don't want to go. And we all probably have known relationships that have broken down because of a lust that got out of control. Somebody started looking or talking or hanging out with somebody else, and before you know it, they were crossing lines. What we see on the news, famous celebrities or politicians, movie stars or singers who will throw their reputation or their marriage or sometimes even their career away because of the pursuit of something that just occupied way yonder too much of their mind. And that lust has such a powerful hook on us that it can take us places that we don't want to go. And it's not really just people far from God. Sadly, it's people who make their intent to follow God that can get caught in this. The pornography industry is not just making its money on non-Christians. There's a lot of Christians who fall into traps here, and we defend it sometimes. People do, and they'll say, "Well, I'm just looking. You know, if I'm just looking, it doesn't really count." Like a person going to the mall. I'm just window shopping, right? I'm not really buying anything. But even that look, Jesus says, has the potential to do great damage to your soul and to your spouse and maybe to your kids or to people who see the way you look at others, who notice the way that you can be distracted, who notice that your weakness is getting out of control. Israel's greatest king, David, stands out as an example of somebody who had everything going his way and then in one bad moment gave it all away because of lust that was out of control. The story is in 2 Samuel chapters 11 and 12. And I'm not going to put all the verses on the screen. It's a whole chapter of story, but I'm going to tell it to you. And then maybe in your group you can actually go through the story more slowly and see if you can't see things in there that need to be studied. David, it says at the very beginning, he's getting older, and his army is going off to war, but he's not any longer. He's really too old to be going out and doing that sort of thing, and old age is starting to settle in. And maybe David was having some of the same problems that I have, and the body doesn't heal as quick as it used to. You're getting more of a bald spot there in the back. You're seeing some wrinkles in the eyes. And if you follow David, scripturally speaking, when he was a young man, women would come out of their houses when he went by and would sing songs to him. That really happened. Women would sing songs about him because of how awesome he was. And I never had that experience. But as the closer as close as I ever got to that experience, that's long behind. When you can't go out to war any longer. And now that's happening to David, right? Maybe he's thinking about some royal gain or a little track there at the palace. And one night, while he's waiting by himself, he looks out across the kingdom there. He's on a hill there, and he can see all the different houses. He's looking down on the people below him, and he sees a woman taking a bath on the top of her roof there. And then that sort of thing happened, right? Because the water's heated up there all day long. It's an era without hot water heaters. But still, he notices her, right? And she's beautiful, it says. And so he sends for one of his guys and says, who's that? And the guy comes in and he says, "Oh, that. Well, that's Bathsheba. That's the wife of Uriah," he tells him, which was an unusual way to introduce somebody. Normally in that day, you would introduce someone as the son or daughter of this person. This is Jeff, son of Ed, is what you do, or something like that. But that's not what he does. Hey, that's somebody's wife there, David. That's somebody's wife. Because he can kind of see what David's thinking. This servant can. He's taking a little bit of a risk by saying that because David could see what this guy's doing. It's like a yellow light. When you're driving through town and you see a yellow light, you're supposed to slow down. You're supposed to apply some caution. You're supposed to kind of ease up there and think about it, what's going on. And when this servant says to David, hey, that's somebody's wife, that should have been a caution light. One of the lies, of course, about all the video and the pictures and the pornography and all that is that you forget that that's someone's daughter, that's someone's sister, that's someone's wife, right? They become an anonymous person just there to serve you. One of the real hooks of lust is that it dehumanizes people. You don't really want to think of them as a real person. You want to think of them more about what they could do for you. And it's a yellow light blinking. This is somebody's wife, but David blows right through that yellow light. He doesn't stop. He sends some guys to go get her, and they bring her to him, and he sleeps with her. Now, it never really says for sure what Bathsheba's role in all this was. The way the text is written, she might have been completely innocent. It wouldn't have had to have been that she was trying to trap him by taking a bath up there on the roof. That's where people took baths. And she didn't know he was peeping Tom over the wall there. She didn't know that was going on. And even when he sends for her, it didn't have to be that she came willingly. You could read this almost like it's him and he's the king. Or you can read it the other way, that she knew exactly what she was doing when she went up there on top of the roof. She was hoping he'd be watching, and that she's more than a willing participant. All I'll tell you, though, is that the focus of the text is on David. David's the one pulling strings, and David's the one who God has blessed at every turn, and David's the one who's writing all the Psalms, and David's the one who God has chosen to be his representative here in the world. And in spite of all those blessings, he cheats. Well, Bathsheba goes home, and she sends word back, I'm pregnant. Now, I mentioned earlier that she had just had her purification, so she had just had a period, and then she goes and sees David, and now she's pregnant. So this baby is David's. There's no question that this baby's David's. And I don't know if David was worried that when the baby came, it would look like him. It mentions early in the stories that David is red, like he's ruddy. And there's some who think that David's redheaded. Maybe he was afraid. And redheaded was pretty rare. The baby will be born, be redheaded. They'll know right away it's mine. And so he calls Uriah back. Uriah's been out fighting with the army. He's one of the best soldiers. And he calls Uriah back. And he says, Uriah, come back. Tell me how things are going. Never mentions anything about Bathsheba. There's no apologies here. He brings Uriah in and he visits with him and says, hey, go home, see your wife. I'm glad you came. And Uriah won't do it. He won't sleep with her. He stays out with the soldiers who are there in the city. Well, David calls him back. He said, I thought you'd go home and see your wife and hang out with her. And he won't do it. He says, David, all my fellow troops, how could I do this thing? How could I go home and enjoy the comforts of home when all my troops are out there in the field? And I'm assuming when he said this, it kind of embarrassed and shamed David just a little bit. So David gets him drunk. David's getting darker and darker in this whole deal. Gets him drunk, and they spend the whole night together. Say, hey, go on home. And thinking he'll stumble home drunk and maybe sleep with his wife or forget what he did once he gets home. But even drunk, Uriah won't do it. He stays with the soldiers. So David calls him back again, says, here, take this letter to Joab. He's the general in charge of the armies. Take this to Joab, and don't you read it. And Uriah doesn't read it, and takes the letter to Joab, and Joab looks at the letter, and the letter says, hey, put Uriah in the front. I need him to be killed. And Joab does it, and Uriah dies. And after Bathsheba mourns for a little bit, David marries her. And months go by. She has the baby. But God knows what's going on. And he sends his prophet Nathan to go talk to David. And he, through a clever story, makes it clear that God knows what you did. And Nathan, too, as God's spokesman, I know what you did. And again, it's a yellow light. God's great at that. Just gives you little subtle warnings. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Are you sure this is really what you want to do? He's given David several of those. His servant said, hey, ain't this somebody's wife? Uriah would not take the bait. And because he wanted to be righteous, and he saw Uriah's example and being righteous, and these are all yellow. Are you sure this is the road you want to head down? And finally now Nathan has exposed that God knows, but there had to be a temptation. David said, I'll just kill Nathan and then I'll get away with it altogether. But it's at this moment, finally at the very end, that David repents. It's at this moment, finally at the very end, that he comes around. And he writes this psalm, Psalm chapter 51, and in it he says that his sins are like scarlet, but God, you can make me white like snow, that you can take all this dark part of me and you can wash it away. I know I've sinned, he says, against you and against you only, but you can restore me, and you can restore unto me the joy of my salvation. Lust is a powerful thing, and I would imagine that some of the people watching it know what I'm talking about. They're tempted by things they shouldn't be tempted by. And maybe God has sent little warnings to you at different times. We'll consider this another yellow light, if he has. God is there on the other side, and all you got to do is reach out to him. And even if your sins are like scarlet, he'll wash them white as snow. He promises to. And he can restore unto you the joy of your salvation if you'll trust him enough to do things his way.